A while ago, I recorded an hour-long lesson on bass drum technique, which you can find on my website, joecrabtree.com. You just need to sign up for a free masterclass account and you'll find it in the store. Now, in that lesson, I talked about heel down technique, heel up technique, various exercises for gaining control of dynamics and all sorts of things like that. This video is kind of a follow-up to that, and I just want to talk about a few extra things that I've focused on since recording that video. I still recommend checking it out, and there's a lot of stuff in there that will help you with your bass drum technique. But if you've watched that and you're a heel up player, this video is going to share a couple of things that I've been working on since then. So one thing I want to talk about is footwear. I do a lot of practice without shoes on. The reason for that is I used to buy trainers specifically for drumming in. So they'd be like basketball trainers with big thick soles on them. And the reason for that was it hurt to play the bass drum if I had thin soled shoes, because I used to really lay into it and I'd be absorbing all the shock of the beater hitting the head through my leg. So I decided to start practicing without shoes on so that I could see what the pedal was trying to do and I could kind of get out of the way. It's the equivalent of learning to let the stick bounce off the head. So I used to dig into the head, which is the equivalent of doing this, which isn't great for sound or feel. Some people do dig into the bass drum, so it's not a bad thing to do, but I find if you have two full heads on or your bass drum's tuned in a certain way, then when you dig into the head you get kind of a fluttering and you get multiple notes that you don't necessarily want, plus you're absorbing all the impact through your leg. And on top of that, you don't have the option of an open bass drum sound. If you let the beater bounce off the head, then you can hear the full sound of the bass drum. So these shoes that I wear, basically, this is like my only pair of shoes. They're Vibram or Terraplana. These are the Aqua ones, and they're kind of like wide at the top to allow your foot to spread out so it's not crushing the side of your foot. And the soles are really, really flexible. And you can feel a lot of what's going on. So I wear these for drumming in and for just everyday use. They're really good shoes. I'll put a link to where you can get them on the blog on my website. But for practice, I still like to play without shoes on a lot of the time, just to increase my feeling of what's going on with the pedal. So the next thing I want to talk about is the point of contact between your foot and the pedal. With shoes on, this is harder to identify, but basically I've been trying to make the point of contact be the ball of my foot. So on your hands you've got your fingers, on your feet you've got your toes. The point at which they join to the rest of your foot or your hand, that's kind of the ball area. And on the foot I'm talking about the area under your big toe. So rather than the outside of the foot where the toes join, it's specifically under the big toe. And so in order to play with that, I have to kind of lift my toes out the way a little bit. You don't need to do that when you get the hang of it, but what we're trying to do is avoid tensing the toes and having those be the point of contact with the pedal. This is for a few reasons. One of them is if your toes are where you're touching the pedal, if the tension of those changes, then, you know, that changes how you're going to play the pedal. And if it moves and so you end up on the ball of your foot, then you've got either there or up here that could be the point of contact with the pedal, and it's hard to get control when that's changing all the time. Plus, if your toes kind of tense up when you're on a gig, then your foot starts to tense up and other things start to tense up. So I like to focus on the ball of my foot being the point of contact. Now this means I can still play like the middle of the pedal or a little further down without my heel being all the way off the bottom of the footboard. I like to play further back. I don't want the point of contact to be up near the top of the pedal, because you've got to push it a long way to get the beater to hit the head, and you've got to get more out of the way when it's bouncing back. If you're further down the pedal, you don't have to move it as much, and it feels like you get a more powerful stroke that way. So the next thing I want to talk about is preparation. If you leave the pedal alone, the natural position of the beater is kind of like 45 degrees or something off the head. You can't get much of a powerful stroke from that, where you want to play the stroke with the beater starting back here. But the only way to get that to happen is to use the spring tension to pull it back. So that means that you need to start off with it up here. and then you let the spring do its work, pulls the beater further back, and you can play the stroke from there. Now, in order to do that, you have to start with the beater up here, let it come back here, and then play it. Now, because I play off the head, the way I used to do this was I would be in the rest position and I would try and lift my leg up so that the spring could do its work, but without the beater touching the head, because then you get this little note going on that you don't want. That's like an unintended note. So I would try and lift my leg up without that happening, but I still wanted the beater to go close to the head. So you're in this weird position where, you want the beater to go forward some, but not far enough to hit the head. And you can't really focus on that when you're playing a groove. And I find that even if I'd practiced doing that without the beater touching the head, when I would play a gig, and if I was recording it, I would sometimes hear these extra notes on the bass drum where it touched without me realizing it. And I've watched El Negro and Virgil Donati and a bunch of other guys kind of up close, and I've seen that the same thing happens. The beater touches the head when they lift the leg up. Something that I'm going to call interference. If you have a groove that you're playing with the hands up here, maybe it's like, a kind of ghost notey thing. There's a lot going into making that sound consistent. Now, if you go and try and put some bass drum notes in and you lift your leg up and, it tenses your abs to lift it up because you've nothing to push off, then that can disturb this groove very easily. So what we want is a way to prepare without having to use your abs to lift your leg up. Now, if you're somebody who plays into the head, that's easy because you can use your ankle muscles to kind of bounce off the head and prepare like this. You can do that even if you've got no core strength at all. It doesn't affect your balance. If you're playing heel down, it's easy because you've got that anchor point with your heel all the time. But if you play off the head and you play heel up, then you've got the problem that I was talking about. So the way I've come to kind of remedy this is, firstly, not to be bothered about the fact that it's going to hit the head on the way up. But secondly, I'm kind of intentionally utilizing that now. So my stroke will end with the beater slightly off the head, like this. And then in preparation for the next stroke, I will actually roll the beater into the head. So I'll roll my foot so the beater's on the head, and then I can prepare like I would if I played into the head. And if you compare doing that to doing it where you try and lift up without the beater hitting the head, you'll see the huge difference it has on your upper body and your balance. So that's been a really useful thing for me to work on. So they're basically the two main things that I've changed or considered in terms of technique. The other thing that's made a huge difference to my playing is the thing that I'm sitting on, which is a Porter & Davis BC2. Now, when I got this, I think Gavin Harrison had one and Steve White had one, and I'd seen their reviews of them saying that they were great, and that was enough to get me to check one out. And it didn't take long, having played on one, to think that it would be very difficult to play without it. I play with these in-ear monitors a lot, and there's not a lot of low end on those. So on a gig, the bass drum is the thing that gets lost in the mix, and I will end up playing harder because I can't hear it. And I once hurt my knee on a gig to the point where I couldn't play with my right foot, so I had to put the hi-hat over here and play the bass drum with my left foot for the rest of the gig. And that's the kind of thing I don't want to have to do. So the BC2 is a huge, it's had a huge impact on my playing, and I make sure I have it on every gig. And basically, you have a mic in the bass drum, and it goes through the BC2 engine and then to the front of house or whoever wants that feed. And then you have a speaker lead that goes into the stool top. And this isn't like a butt kicker where you screw something to a stool and it thumps it. I've never used one of those, but I heard lots of things about there being a delay and it not really giving you a sense of what your bass drum foot was doing. This thing, you actually hear the bass drum in your ears. It's really incredible, and I would say it's the best investment I've made as far as drumming goes, much better than buying a new kit or a new cymbal. This has really changed the way that I play and the enjoyment that I get out of gigs. So as I say, there are lots of lessons on my website, on the masterclass, that are way more in depth than these short YouTube videos, cover all sorts of topics about technique and practice and the kind of in-depth ideas that I can't really go into on the YouTube videos. Recommend checking those out. That's joecrabtree.com/masterclass. Sign up for a free account, and there are some free lessons on there, and there's a bunch of things that you can pay for, but they're like, you know, hours long, and there's a lot of stuff in there. So check those out, and I will see you next time.